on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Tonight we'll be taking our usual broad look across the DMV landscape. We, of course, have to start with football because, hey, it's really easy to cover both the Ravens and the Commanders when they play each other in the given week. We're going to take a look at the game, the winner, and who performed well and who has some stuff to work on as we head into Week 4. We'll also take a look at the college football landscape where there's a surprising similarity between our top 3 DMV schools. We'll find out who that is. And also a DMV school ranked in the top 25. And no, it's probably not the one that you expected. We also have to jump into hockey because the NHL season has kicked off and the Caps are off to a pretty decent start. And the NBA season is almost here. We're going to take a look at how the Wizards are looking in preseason and as we get towards the regular season. And of course, we'll be doing all of this while continuing Fall Beverage Month with one of my all-time favorite fall beers. That's right. You're reading that name correctly, folks. You're not going to want to miss that one. We've got all that and more coming up on Let's Wine About DMV Sports on the IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And once again, good evening, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to Let's Wine About DMV Sports here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports, and who, for the past 25 years, has been bringing you amazing sports content, ranging from interviewing legendary athletes to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. If you have not done so already, please, of course, follow us on all social media platforms, X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube, all of the above at IE Sports Radio. You are also able to listen to us on all of the below options, whether you're listening live tonight or later on in the week. It doesn't matter to us. Every view is a good view no matter when it happens. So you've got all these below options: Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio. The list goes on and on. Do be sure also to check out our website, iesportsradio.com. There you will find our show pages. Every show, all 30 plus that we have now, has a show page, which gives you a little bit of the background behind the voice of the show and the show itself. You'll also find our merchandise. We've got hats, long sleeve shirts, I believe, and sweaters for the warmer months, t-shirts, a whole bunch of different stuff. So do check all of that out. Of course, also check out yours truly on X, Instagram, and TikTok, all at Let's Wine _IESR. Also on our website, you'll be able to find the blog, which you can find through the website or at IE Sports Radio blog.wordpress.com. You'll be able to find that there as well. They also have the Hall of the Month, Fan of the Month, the IE Sports Radio Hall of Fame. There's a whole bunch of stuff. So definitely be sure to check out that website either now or, when the show is over. Your preference. Doesn't matter to me. And, of course, none of this would be possible without our sponsors, and I think we'll take a quick break to listen to a little bit more about those sponsors.
IE Sports Radio fans, this show is brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, Single A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein. Go to their website at planetjerky.net and follow them on Instagram at Planet Jerky. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet.
Hey there, IE Sports Radio fans. Be sure to check out our sponsor, Seal the Deal Wax Seals by Cecilia B. You just finished your very own wedding or baby shower invitations and you're looking for that extra special touch? Maybe you just wrote a letter to a relative or a friend and you want to add to their smile when they receive it. Then seal the deal with Cecilia's handmade sealing wax stamps for your invitations, letters, and gifts. You bring the deal, we'll bring the seal. You can find them on Instagram at sealthedeal_wax stamps and on Facebook, Seal the Deal Wax Seals.
And welcome back to Let's Whine About DMV Sports here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Once again, shout out to our sponsors, Planet Jerky Premium Beef Brisket Jerky. It is jerky that is truly on a whole nother planet. It's not that expensive either, like 10 or 12 bucks a pack, which I mean for jerky nowadays, that's very reasonable, especially for handcrafted jerky. And they've got a whole bunch of different flavors ranging from the really simple ones like barbecue, classic, all the way up to the really spicy ones like volcanic jalapeno, ghost pepper, Carolina Reaper. Do be careful with those because those will give you a kick. But Planet Jerky, do check them out on Instagram at Planet Jerky, and you can order direct from their website, planetjerky.net today. Also, Seal the Deal Wax Seals by Cecilia B. A wonderful little last touch to your fancy party, to your wedding, to your baby shower, to your birthday party, whatever the occasion may be. If it's looking for that last little touch, and maybe you haven't quite figured it out yet. Maybe you're like, what is the last thing I need? It could be some custom wax seals by Cecilia B. So do check her out on Instagram at @sealthedeal_wax seals, and you can actually order some seals from the IE Sports Radio website. So that's pretty cool. Do check her out today. We've got a ton of sports to get to, but of course, we must start with the beverage. We are continuing fall beverage / North Carolina beer month here on Let's Whine About DMV Sports. Last week was supposed to be it was a beer by a local brewery called it was called a cherry pie sour, and despite the fact that I did not go live, I did indeed try it because I think I have cherry pie as part of my Thanksgiving meal. So I often associate that as a fall treat, and of course, a nice warm pie is really enjoyable any time of the year, but especially so when it starts getting cooler. So I did try that one, and I can say that I'm actually a little happy that I didn't try it live on air, because it was described as a cherry pie sour. And first of all, they need to take pie off of the label, because I did not taste a single hint of anything that might resemble a pie. The cherry flavor was there, but it wasn't really prominent. It was mostly just sour. So they got that part right, but it really would not have fit our fall beer description or our fall beverage description, especially not as well as that cider. But I have every faith that this beer right here will indeed get the job done. This is one of my favorite fall beers that I've ever had. It is by a brewery called Deep River Brewing, and it is their pumpkin pie porter. It is 5.9% alcohol. I've had this beer many times before. This is a little bit bigger can. This is a pint. And it does taste like a pumpkin pie. Typically, of course, this is a new year, new vintage. So, we got to give it a old tasty taste, and we're going to give it a proper pour here, just for good measure. Got to show the pouring skills there live on air. Look at that. That's a beauty. And look at that beer. Dark, not too dark, but definitely a nice kind of roasted looking beer right there. Let's give it a whiff. Smell, it's got that pumpkin smell to it. This one does have the pie component as well. We're going to give it a sip-a-doo here. Old Faithful, it's reliable. It tastes like a pumpkin pie. So shout out to Deep River for making a consistently great fall product. It definitely checks all of the marks for your fall, your fall getting into winter beers, because you'll want something a little bit heavier. You want something a little bit darker, something with some more weight to it. You don't necessarily want a wheat ale or an IPA, a session IPA, or a light lager. You want something with a little bit of oomph to it. So the porter takes care of that part. And then the pumpkin pie, the pumpkin flavorings go really well with kind of the roasted malt flavorings that you typically get from a porter. Yeah, I mean, it just tastes like a pumpkin pie. I don't really know how to explain it if you've ever had a pumpkin pie before. Little bit of that spice to it that you get, kind of the, typical pumpkin flavor, a little bit of the yeastiness that comes naturally from the beer. It checks all of the boxes. Got a little bit of weight, but it's not too high in alcohol. Like we described, it's only 5.9%, so it's not going to kick your butt or knock you out, but it is going to give you that kind of warm feeling that you might want on a cool fall day. And because it's pumpkin and not necessarily Oktoberfest, it is applicable a little bit later into the fall season. Oktoberfest virtually disappears after October 31st, Halloween. But, some of your other fall beverages, like your pumpkin beers or your other flavored beverages, they have application after October 31st, because November is still a fall month, very much so. In fact, it's got the fall holiday in it, Thanksgiving. So definitely you want to keep your eye out for beers that will get you through November as well. But yeah, great beer, great brewery. I've had a bunch of their stuff, and yeah, shout out to them for making a consistently good product. We're going to take our first commercial break of the evening. When we come back, we're going to dive into some sports. Do not go away. You're listening to Let's Whine About DMV Sports here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Sports fans, do you like teams that are tough, cities that are tougher, and fan bases that are passionate about their teams? How about teams that are historic and stadiums that are iconic? Then you belong in Chicago, and you need to check out Chi-Town Weekly. Join me, Adam Kernan, every week as we keep up with all things Chicago sports. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox, We'll cover them all, plus more. The Windy City is always buzzing, and we'll keep you up on all the big games and major stories. So tune in to Chi-Town Weekly every week right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's up, everybody? This is Darren Rodriguez. Are you a fan of volleyball? Are you a fan of Thunderous Spikes? Then I have the show for you, Set Point, where I cover NCAA men's and women's volleyball, high school boys and girls volleyball, beach volleyball, and even professional volleyball. Catch the action every week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And welcome back to Let's Whine About DMV Sports here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. All right, we've covered all of our admin stuff, of course. We've covered our beer. Take another sip because this one's really good. Yeah, that'll take care of you on a fall day for sure. Now it is time to get into some sports. And of course, we got to start in the pro ranks because, well, we had both of the DMV teams playing each other this past weekend. The Ravens going toe-to-toe with the Commanders, and the Ravens would come out on top in this one 30-23 in what was anticipated to be one of the games of the week, and it was indeed a great game. Both teams exchanged some scores. There were some great defensive plays, but in the end, the Ravens just had a little bit too much for the upstart Commanders. But hey, I mean, it was a valiant effort by the Commanders, and the rookie Jaden Daniels played an excellent football game. Obviously, he's going to have some rookie moments, but overall he played an excellent game, a clean game. He worked in the pocket, he worked out of the pocket, he got moving. The Commanders were at a bit of a disadvantage because they didn't have running back Brian Robinson, who was off to an excellent start to the season. Him and Austin Eckler were forming a fantastic 1-2 wombo combo in the backfield. So without him, they were at a severe disadvantage. But Terry McLaurin had a great game. Jaden Daniels did well. Just the defense just couldn't quite keep Lamar Jackson and company down. And definitely, Derrick Henry late in the game was just running through everybody. That is a tough draw. You get to most of the way through a game, you have to slow the opposing offense down, and it's Derrick Henry rumbling down the field. I can't imagine what it's going to be like when Keaton Mitchell comes back healthy. You unleashed a speedy Mitchell late in the game when the defense has had to deal with Derrick Henry for 3 quarters. I mean, That's just not fair. By the way, shout out to Adam Karnick jumping in the chat room. Yes, sir, this is a dark beer. This is Deep River Brewing's Pumpkin Pie Porter. And yes, it does indeed taste like a pumpkin pie. One of my favorite beers. Not too heavy, but enough for the fall months. So definitely a good beer to have. But yes, a great game for both teams. I don't think anybody should be hanging their head low on this one. The Commanders fought hard. The Ravens obviously played a very good game because they came out with the victory. Clean game, not a ton of mistakes made either way as well. But yeah, I think for a game that was hyped up to be one of the best games of the week, it definitely lived up to the hype. Now, both teams sit at 4-2, and both teams are atop of their division. The Ravens are tied record-wise with the Steelers. However, the Steelers have yet to play a divisional game, whereas the Ravens have played and won a divisional game. So that gives them the early advantage, but they are indeed tied there. And the Commanders have a half a game lead on the Eagles, who had an early bye, so they are a game behind. But yeah, great game for both teams, and now they get to look ahead to their next challenges, which for the Ravens next week, they get to, or this tomorrow, they play on Monday. On Monday, they get to travel to Tampa Bay to face off against the Buccaneers. Now, Tampa's off to a 4-2 start. They are looking very good. They beat the Commanders in the first week of the season, although many have made the argument on Twitter that if they played that same game now, the outcome might be a little different. Not saying that they would necessarily, the Commanders would necessarily win that one, but it would be a lot closer affair than that first week was. But in any case, the Bucs are 4-2. They're off to a really good start. This is going to be a great matchup. I mean, the Ravens are going to have back-to-back games of the week potentially. First last week against the Commanders, and now this one. The keys to this game for the Ravens, it's going to be containing Mike Evans and Chris Godwin on the perimeter. One of the arguably weakest spots on the team so far for the Ravens has been their cornerbacks. They have not done great. They haven't been awful, but they haven't been great. And now, of course, they face a dynamic receiving duo, arguably one of the best in the league, in Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. So they're going to have to figure out how to keep them contained and limit that big play. Because if you force this Bucs offense to kind of grind it out and do these they're not necessarily built as well for the long drives. Not that they can't necessarily do it, but I think it's better if you slow their game down and limit their big plays. I think that'll give you a better shot in the long run. And on offense, just really, for the Bucs defense, just keep Vita Vea from destroying Lamar Jackson. That's the big key. Vita Vea, 6'4", 345-pound behemoth in the middle of that Bucs defensive line. He is a monster. He did a number on the Commanders when they first played, and he is a wrecking ball. So keep Vita Vea under control. That's going to be the job, particularly on the interior. Tyler Linderbaum at center, Daniel Fa'alele at right guard, who Fa'alele is a big boy in his own right. I think it's like 6'7", 350 or 360, something like that. But yeah, and then whoever ends up at left guard, I know traditionally their starting left guard has been Andrew Voorhees. However, he has been dealing with some injury, so it might be Patrick McCarry slotting in at that spot. But whoever it is, they are going to have to make sure, the middle three is going to have to make sure that Vita Vea does not blow it up. And no, the Ravens cannot de facto use running back Justice Hill, who has been an absolute beast in pass protection. Do not let Justice Hill block Vita Vea. I know they let him block Chris Jones against the Chiefs in week 1, and that actually went surprisingly well. But yeah, keep Vita Vea under control and limit the big plays on offense. And I think the Ravens will be able to escape Tampa with a victory. I don't think this is an unwinnable game. This would definitely fall into one of those 50-50 games that we talked about in past shows, a 50-50 shot for the Ravens, but I definitely give them a chance here. And for the Commanders, they get to host the Carolina Panthers. Now, The key to this game, and it's very simple, it's one key. There's only one key to this game. Do not let it become a trap game. The Commanders are coming off a big game last week against the Ravens. If you look past the Panthers, they have the 4-2 Chicago Bears, who are led by Caleb Williams, number 1 overall pick in this past draft, when Jaden Daniels was the number 2 pick. So that game has a lot of implications. Then the 3 of the next 4 games after that are against the divisional opponents. Plus, that last game is against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are also off to a very good start to the season. So you've got 5 very important, very critical games after this one. Do not let this become the trap game. So far this year, the Commanders have been the superior team across the board against if you match them up against the Panthers. This should be a win. This is a favorable matchup. Do not let it become a trap game. Every team in the NFL is still a team full of professional football players. Don't take this too lightly. Do not let the future games cloud you from this one. Treat it as you would any other game and take it seriously and go out there and get the victory. Simple enough. I'm not going to go into specific matchups. Like I said, on paper, this Commanders team is superior to the Commanders are superior to the Panthers. And there's actually been a running joke on Twitter that there are a couple of players that the Commanders should just go ahead and trade for right after the game. That way they don't have to leave D.C. J.C. Horn, cornerback, is one of the prime examples there, a guy who everybody in D.C. wants to upgrade the secondary, and I wouldn't mind it as well if the price is right. But yes, do not fall for the trap. On to some college football now. We've got all of the results in for this weekend. The Maryland Terps played an instant classic today at home against the USC Trojans. They were down late in this game. It was 28-14 with 13 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. The Terps would score a touchdown and add a 2-point conversion, which was a gutsy call to go for 2 there, but they managed to make it happen to make it 28-22. Then they blocked USC's field goal attempt, which set them up in good field position and, of course, kept it a 1-score game. And they were able to drive down, and quarterback Billy Edwards, with about 50 seconds left on the clock, ran it in from 3 yards out to give them the lead after the extra point. And then the Trojans had a chance to get a field goal on the board to steal the victory with about 50 seconds left. They were actually on Maryland's side of the field, but they failed to convert a 4th down, and Maryland was able, obviously, to run out the clock at that point. So the Terps escaped 29-28. That moves them to 4-3 on the season. Big victory for them. However, this was not one of the toughest games on their schedule. It was a big game in terms of, this is a team with a lot of prestige, a lot of national significance, and to go onto the national stage and beat them was a great feat for the Terps. However, they still have some of the toughest football of the season ahead of them. As we take a look at the schedule here, they get Minnesota next week. However, following Minnesota, they get number 2 Oregon. Whew, that's a toughie. That's a tough one in Oregon, too. Then they get to host Rutgers and Iowa, both of which have winning records. But then they end the season at Penn State. So 3 games against 3 decent conference opponents, and then 2 games against top 5 teams. So the toughest part of the schedule, definitely ahead of it for Maryland, but they are now 4-3. Billy Edwards is playing some very good football. Ty Felton continues to be that top receiver for the team. They're also getting some great play out of Caden Prather, senior receiver. He had a great game. He had a 100-yard receiving game as well. So the Terps are playing good football, but they need to play even better football over the final 5 games of the season. We also had Virginia Tech played Thursday night, actually. They hosted Boston College, and they came away with the victory 42-21. This was a weird game. Virginia Tech got out to a 28-0 lead. Then they gave up 3 straight scores for Boston College to make it 28-21, and then they scored 2 more touchdowns before the end of it. By Shul Tatum, the starting running back, had himself a day. 266 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns on only like 18 carries, and he also had a receiving touchdown. So a huge day for Tatum. And then Kaiden Drones, the starting quarterback, also had a very good game. So that moves Virginia Tech to 4-3 on the season. It gives them another critical interconference win. Not that I think it matters, because I don't think Virginia Tech is really going to be in the position where seeding becomes important. But yes, a very important victory for Virginia Tech to move to 4-3. And then we had Virginia playing Clemson today, and they lost that one. It wasn't a horrible loss, but they were down the whole game. They realistically did not have much of a chance in this one. I believe the final score was 48-31. Double checking this now here. It was fun. It was a ranked matchup. This should have, yeah, yes, 48-31. The Clemson Tigers offense just ran up and down on Virginia. Virginia's defense was unable to put up much of a fight there. But they still sit at 4-3, and their schedule, it's got some difficult games coming up. I'm not going to lie. They host North Carolina, which is manageable. Then they travel to Pittsburgh, who's undefeated and ranked. They travel to Notre Dame, who is ranked. And then they host SMU, who is ranked. So 3 straight ranked teams for Virginia in their final 5 before facing off against Virginia Tech. But that's going to be a very tough stretch for them, especially as they move to, ideally, what you would describe as a bowl game. Now, I don't think entering the season we expected to be discussing all 3 of our DMV schools being 4-3. However, that is where we sit. And with 5 weeks to go, all 3 have a chance at becoming bowl eligible. Maryland, we discussed their schedule. Obviously, they've got the 2 tough ranked matchups, but then they only have to win 2 of the other 3, which are definitely winnable games. Virginia's got a tough road ahead of them. They might be the least likely of the group. They might go into that last game against Virginia Tech needing a win to become bowl eligible. Virginia Tech's schedule a little bit easier, not as many ranked teams, but still, I don't think we thought that we'd be discussing bowl game possibilities through 7 games for all 3 of our teams, and yet here we sit. So hey, could we be extending our college football season a little bit longer this year for the DMV? We shall see. There's another team that might have a say in this as well, and that would be Navy, who defeated Charlotte today to stay undefeated and stay ranked in the top 25. That's right. I don't know if many of us thought we'd be talking about Navy as a ranked team this year, but hey, that is where we are. They were 25th entering the week, and advantage them. 24th-seeded Michigan lost to Illinois today, so they will jump up a spot. Now, 23-seed Army, they won, so they won't jump Army. Illinois was 22, and they beat Michigan, so they're not going to jump Illinois. And then SMU is 21, and they are currently playing, and I believe they're also currently winning. Let's double check. I'm also keeping half an eye on our Caps game that's currently going. Hopefully I can capture a result there, although it is currently tied, but we digress. Let's see. SMU is currently playing Stanford and up 28-7. So SMU likely to hold on there, and that will keep them ranked. So I don't think Navy will move up much more than maybe 1 spot. Heck, it also wouldn't even surprise me if an unranked team pulled off a good victory and they jumped Navy to get to 24 and Navy stayed at 25. But either way, Navy's ranked. They are now 6-0, and they are definitely doing much better. Well, I mean, being ranked in general for a team like Navy, who's an independent, who obviously being a military school has different expectations when it comes to football. For them to be ranked and to Army to be ranked as well comes as a pleasant change of pace. So congratulations to them. Keep on winning. They do have Notre Dame next week. So, hey, you never know. Pull off the upset over Notre Dame, and they might sneak into the top 20, folks. They might even sneak into the top 15. And if one of the military schools, Navy or Army, were to go undefeated with the new 12-team playoff, depending on how things work out, do you put them in the playoff? An undefeated military school? That would be an interesting scenario, I'm going to cross my fingers to see if that unfolds as we head through the college football season. That will do it for the first sports part of our show. We've got a second half coming up, but we're going to take a quick break. Do not go away. You're listening to Let's Whine About DMV Sports here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hey, Cleveland and Columbus sports fans. This is Jen B, host of the Show of the Land on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. If you love Cleveland and Columbus sports like I do, be sure to tune in live to the Show of the Land on Tuesdays, where we will cover the Cleveland Browns, Cavs, Guardians, and Monsters. We will also talk about the Columbus Blue Jackets, Crew, Fury, and of course, the Ohio State Buckeyes. We'll also cover other colleges in the area like Akron, Kent State, Cleveland State, Mount Union, John Carroll, Baldwin Wallace, Youngstown State, among others. So like I said, if you love Cleveland and Columbus sports like I do, be sure to tune in Tuesdays to the Show of the Land with Jen B on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's up, Pittsburgh? This is Ralph DeLeese, the host of the Injury Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Are you that passionate die-hard Steelers, Penguins, Pirates, or just a Pittsburgh sports fan? Then please join me on the Injury Report every Tuesday on IE Sports Radio, the direct feed for all that is sports. And I will update you on all that's black and gold, have you telling your Pittsburgh fans and friends what's up with Pittsburgh sports. Tune in Tuesday with me, Ralph DeLeese, the Injury Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Let's go!
And welcome back to Let's Whine About DMV Sports here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. We are entering the final portion of our show, which is, of course, my prime time to remind everybody of the show's main message, which is please drink responsibly. Do not drink and drive. One of my favorite social media posts regarding this topic, is that you can afford an Uber or a taxi before you can afford a DUI. So please drink responsibly. Do not drink and drive. It is simply not worth it. I will not be going anywhere after this, and if you have been drinking, neither should you. So, if you're at home please stay put. Or if you're out and about watching the college football games, watching some hockey games, whatever sporting event is going on, please find a safer method home. Uber, taxi, designated driver, Lyft, Amazon ship yourself home, I imagine. If it isn't an option yet, it will be an option in the near future. But whatever the manner is, just please do not drink and drive. It is simply not worth it. We are going to step away from football, and there's no baseball to talk about, so we get to talk in depth about basketball and hockey. I'm still waiting for this result to get final in the Caps game so that I can try to incorporate it into our section here, and it is still tied, and there's 21 seconds left. So that game actually might be going into overtime. But in any case, let's talk about the Wizards. Now, the Wizards have had a very interesting preseason. There have been moments where the team has looked good. They've looked cohesive, explosive. They've covered, they've played well defensively, offensively, all of the above and more. And then they've had moments where, they look like what they are, a young, developing team that's going to lean on a young core with a couple of veterans who are likely to be traded at some point in the season. And they will likely not win many games. That's how they've looked at times. Sometimes they've looked better. The question is, which Wizards team is going to show up come the regular season? I think the problem is, and this might just be conjecture on my part, is that when you see the team being cohesive, you're seeing the best possible results for this team in a preseason game where you're probably not getting the best effort from the opposing side. So I think realistically, the best that this team can produce is not a contending. It's at best maybe a sneak into the 10 seed as a play-in team, but the most likely result, because you're not going to have three rookies play their best basketball all year long. Kyle Kuzma and Jordan Poole are not those guys that can take a team and elevate them at night in and night out. Occasionally, yes. Could Kyle Kuzma occasionally drop 40 points in a game? Heck yeah. Could Jordan Poole go off for a double-double, a 30 and 10 assist? Sure, he could do that. Could Valanciunas randomly throw out a 20-point, 15 rebound, 3 block affair? Sure. But night in and night out, these guys aren't going to do it. So I think you're seeing what we expected from the Wizards. I think you're seeing both the best and the kind of standard expected Wizards play in the preseason. And that's just the way this season's going to be. Now, there was one significant roster move today because the Wizards had 16 players on their roster entering today, so they had to trim one, and to the surprise, not necessarily surprise, but more so the chagrin of many, excuse me, hate it when I have to sneeze on air, to the surprise, but mostly chagrin of many, that cut ended up being Jared Butler, which I actually surprisingly called in a Twitter conversation because somebody posed the question, which Wizards player do you think could get cut? And I commented, I think there's a low-key reasonable chance that it could be Jared Butler because his contract was not guaranteed, and he's a point guard at a position where they have Poole. Jordan Poole is going to play the majority of the point guard minutes. They have the rookie Bub Carrington, who they are going to try to get meaningful minutes to early and often on the season. They have Malcolm Brogdon would be the third point guard, and he's hurt, but he's only going to miss the first 3 to 4 weeks of the season. Not the end of the world. Plus, Kyle Kuzma can also manage the offense. He can be the main ball distributor. So I wasn't surprised. I was a little disappointed because I really like Butler, both as a player, as a reserve point guard. I think he was a great fit for this team. And then his contract was very affordable, less than $2.5 million this year and next. So I think financially it made sense to keep him. I think fit-wise it made sense to keep him, but it's a numbers game. You're not going to keep everybody. And it was realistically down to him, Johnny Davis or Anthony Gill. And I think Davis and Gill both had guaranteed contracts, which could have been the main difference maker. Davis also had a little bit more of a contract, and I think there may have been some discussions in the background about trading him to free up that roster spot, but they might not have gotten the commensurate value that they were hoping to get for the former top 10 overall pick. Why it wasn't Gill is a little surprising to me. I guess they just wanted the veteran depth down low. I think long term for the season as well, if you look at the roster breakdown, let's just go ahead and get into it now. You see you see interesting tiers. You have a series of guys who are on expiring contracts, veterans who they are hoping can play well with some minutes and garner some trade value at the trade deadline. Malcolm Brogdon is the main name on that list. Malcolm, or not Mike, oh my gosh, what is his name? Marvin Bagley. He is another name on that list. And then there's a third name. Why am I blanking on the third name? There's a third guy that really fits that to a T, but I cannot think of him right now. But in any case, guys they are hoping to play well. Maybe Rashawn Holmes was who I was thinking of, but who are they are hoping to play well so that they can get some trade value. And Bagley is one. Rashawn Holmes is another. And then Kyle Kuzma and Jordan Poole fit the category of they're going to get a lot of playing time. They're likely going to play well. And I think they would listen to the right offer as it came through. And I think if you look at those two tiers of guys, there's a disproportionate amount leaning towards the bigs side of things. Kuzma, Bagley, Rashawn Holmes. And I think the logic here was probably, well, by mid-season, there's a chance we're going to need Anthony Gill as our fifth or sixth big to play some minutes here and there. So I think that might have been the logic there. Otherwise, I can't really see other than they just really like the guy. But in any case, they are now set at their final 15. Their top units, I expect the starting lineup to probably be Jordan Poole, Bilal Coulibaly, Kyle Kuzma, Alex Sarr, and Jonas Valanciunas. If there is a switch, it would likely be moving Sarr to the second unit and having somebody like Corey Kispert as the starter for a little bit more of a balanced lineup, although I kind of like the big lineup thought. And it's not the worst lineup you could put out there. But in any case, so you'll have those five. Your top backups to start the season, and the reason why I'll just explain why I say to start the season in a second. Your top backups are going to be Bub Carrington, Corey Kispert, Keyshawn George, and then Bagley and Holmes as bigs down low. So there's your top 10. Number 11 is going to be Patrick Baldwin. If you were to put it 1 to 15, 14 and 15 are going to be Malcolm Brogdon and Sadiq Bey. Why? Because they're going to start the season injured. So this team is essentially going to start the year with a 13-man roster until those guys come back. And then number 12 would be Johnny Davis. But I do expect Davis to get some minutes in a rotation. And then number 13 would be Anthony Gill. So that's the way I would break down the roster. Is it a good roster? It's young. It's very young. Coulibaly, Sarr, Carrington, and George, very young group of four. Johnny Davis, also young. Baldwin, relatively young. So there's some young pieces there. And I'm really curious, the defining moment of this team, like I said, this team isn't going to make a deep playoff run. They're not championship contenders. Their best case scenario is sneaking in the back end of the play-in and likely getting whacked off in the first play-in game. But the key to this season, the turning point in the season is going to be the operation around the trade deadline as the team continues to construct the roster and continues to rebuild. Who do they move off of? Brogdon makes a lot of sense as a guy to move off of. Bagley makes a lot of sense as a guy to move off of. Do they get value in a trade offer for Corey Kispert? Could be a guy they trade. Do they get value offers for Poole and Kuzma? Could be in play. Rashawn Holmes could be in play. So there's lots of guys who could be. Now, I'm not saying they're going to trade all of them, but I do think they make significant trades. because you're going to, when Brogdon and eventually Bay are added back in, you're going to have a lot of guys to split minutes with, and some of these guys are going to have to go. So I would expect probably of the current 15 we're talking about, probably 3 or 4 moves at the deadline, and that'll free up some more minutes for these guys. And maybe they'll be able to bring back Jared Butler, and they'll be able to get Tristan Vucevic from a 2-way contract to sign him for the rest of the year so that he can play some meaningful minutes. And it makes sense how they handled his situation and Justin Champagny, 2 guys who they like. However, they can see that right off the bat, they're not going to have the minutes for these guys. So you put them on 2-way, you let them get some playing time in the go-go, maybe call them out. Who's by the way, the G League team for the Wizards is the Metro City Go-Go. I forget exactly what their name is. But you let them get some playing time and that level. And then when some of these guys start to move, that's when you bring them and you add them to the roster, and then they can get some playing time. So I see the strategy. I see the potential. It's just a question of how will the dynamic work as we get to the trade deadline. Speaking of roster situations, we had discussed the Caps roster. Oh my God, they won. Sorry for the interjector. I just had to acknowledge that they won. Who scored the game-winning goal? Who did it? It doesn't say who scored it. Oh wait, maybe did they win the shootout? Oh, it was Tom Wilson. Okay, we'll talk about him in a second. But in any case, I made a mistake when discussing the Caps roster. I had not noticed that they expanded NHL rosters to 23 players a couple years ago. So I was talking about who are they going to cut? They have so many defenders. Well, no, they actually had the perfect number of defenders on the roster. They cut a couple of guys. They put Nick Backstrom and TJ Oshie on long-term IR. They actually added back Stanley Cup run hero Jacob Vrana to the roster in a last-second move to fill out the 23. So they actually have a 23-man roster, which makes sense because then you rotate guys and you've got some options. I like it better. But yeah, so no real drama when it came to roster setup. And then the season kicked off. They did lose their first game. However, I'm still trying to see, did this game end in a draw? Was it I thought I saw that they had scored. Hang on one second. We're going to get to the bottom of this because I actually need this information for one of my next. Okay, so they did. Is it showing as a win? It's showing as a win, so we're going to go ahead and mark it as a win here. So the Caps lost their first game of the season to the New Jersey Devils 5-3. But since then, they have won their last 3 games. They beat the Golden Knights, the Stars, and then tonight the New Jersey Devils in overtime. And that has moved them to 3-1 overall. Now, their positioning in the standings is skewed because early on in the season, there can be some imbalance to how many games teams have played. So it's not a truly accurate description to say that they're third in the in their division, in the Metropolitan Division, because they've only played 4 games and all the teams ahead of them have played 6 or 7. So that's really not fair to them. However, they are 3-1. They are playing very good hockey, especially offensively. The goaltending's been a little shaky, which was a big concern coming into the season with Logan Thompson as kind of a veteran journeyman pickup and Charlie Lindgren, the vet journeyman, plus several young pieces on the defense and some new pieces on the defense. How good was this team going to be able to stop opponents from scoring? But offensively, they have been great, and we are going to start a trend. Now, this is going to be both for the Wizards and the Caps. We are going to start a Player of the Week trend, and this week's Player of the Week is Tom Wilson. He became just the fourth Capital in team history to score a goal in each of the team's first 4 games. Plus, he added 2 tonight, including the game winner against the Devils. That was his 5th goal of the season. Dylan Strom and Jacob Kykren assisting on that. So yeah, this Caps team that a lot of people kind of wrote off entering the season. Oh, Alex Ovechkin's getting up there in age. Backstrom and Oshie are gone. The goaltending situation's questionable. Did they bring in too many new pieces? Well, they're 3-1 through 4 games. So I'll take that any day of the week. But of course, we have another component that is going to be a staple on the show, I imagine, for a little while, the Ovechkin record watch. As many of you know, but if you don't know, you're about to find out, Alex Ovechkin entered the season 41 goals away from tying Wayne Gretzky for the all-time lead in goals in the NHL, 42 away from passing. He did score 1 goal, actually a goal today against the Devils. It is his only goal so far, but he is now 41 away from passing the Great 8. Now, we are going to be watching this very closely throughout the season. And, we might make some comments along the way like, hey, we're 30 games in. Ovechkin's only scored 8 goals. I do not think he breaks the record. And that's going to be an interesting thing to see if he does not break the record at the end of the season. Dude's getting old, getting real old. I don't know if he's turned 40 yet, but he might be there. Let's take a look really quick. But if he's not 40, he's very close, and he is definitely slowed down. The age is starting to show itself for sure. And the question is does he go for it? Does he take that last season to try to get the record? Let's take a quick look here. He just turned 39 in September. So he won't turn 40 this season, but he would turn 40 next year if he took his shot at the record. And that would be an interesting thing for the Caps to watch as well, because he is under contract for next season. And if he doesn't get the record, are they going to be on the hook? Are they basically going to be on the hook for him until he breaks Gretzky's record? Is he even going to have the legs to do it past this season? I mean, this is his 20th season in the league. Just one of the many components to watch as the season goes on for the Caps. But a great start, and I don't think he can go in. I don't think a lot of those doubters wrong. That will do it for tonight's show. Thank you all for tuning in, and thank you for tuning in later on the week. Please follow us on all social media platforms, X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube at IE Sports Radio. You can listen at any of the below options for my show and any of the other great shows. They're all great. If you like any specific sports, we've got a show for you. If you're a fan of cities, we've got a show for you. So do check out all of the other awesome shows here at IE Sports Radio. Do check out our website where you can see the show pages, you can shop, and you can even buy Cecilia B's custom Seal the Deal wax seals. Shout out to her and our other sponsor, Planet Jerky Premium Beef Brisket Jerky. And of course, quick reminder, please drink responsibly. Do not drink and drive. I cannot stress this point enough. Once again, thank you all for tuning in. This has been Mike Patt for Let's Whine About DMV Sports on the IE Sports Radio. Your direct feed for all that is sports. Have a great week. See you next time.